Hello and welcome to Hyperpolyglotting with Elise, home of the 36 language Duolingo speedrun. In this current series on getting comfortable with Chinese characters, we're going to be talking about the morphology of multi-character expressions. And with that one word, I've probably already polarized the audience between hardcore language nerds who are going, morphology! That sounds great, let's do it! And everybody else who hears that term and thinks it's going to be extremely dry and technical and is wondering if there's going to be a test at the end. Don't worry. 心配いりません. 걱정 마시라요. 别担心. I'm going to try to make this worthwhile for both groups. You see, as intimidating as the word morphology might sound, all it actually is the science of making up words that sound legit. Every language has its own ways of building words, and if you understand the most common word-building patterns, you will not only be able to make an educated guess about the meanings of unfamiliar words, you'll know how to make them up yourself if you find yourself at a loss. The nice thing about these patterns is that you find them in basically every language that uses Chinese characters or large volumes of Chinese loanwords. Even though the individual expressions and their meanings can vary, the structures used to form expressions tend to be the same whether you encounter them in Chinese, Japanese, Korean, or Vietnamese. Now, understanding these patterns is useful for all of those languages, but it's particularly handy if you're learning Chinese, as I currently am, for a pretty simple reason. Unlike Korean, which puts spaces between words, or Japanese, which combines Chinese characters with katakana and hiragana, written Chinese is an unbroken flow of Chinese characters. If you're going to begin to make sense out of that, it's useful to understand some basic organizing principles about how terms and expressions are formed. That way, if you're looking at a sentence or a paragraph made up of familiar characters arranged in unfamiliar ways, you can make an educated guess about which unfamiliar character combinations go together to form expressions and which ones don't. The more you understand about these patterns, the easier it'll be to parse written Chinese input and work out where one word ends and another one begins. Today, we're going to have a look at one of the most common expression building patterns, one you'll see in all four languages, combining opposites to create a term that encompasses both of them. Our first example here contains only characters that will be familiar even to total beginners. We've got this one here, which means big, and this other one, which means small. The term is used in Chinese, Japanese, and Korean, where it is pronounced 大小, 大小, and 大小, respectively. It's a pretty typical example, because it has both more literal meanings, such as size in Japanese, Korean, and Chinese, or adults and children in Chinese, as well as anyway or eventually in Chinese. The idea here, of course, is that size is the metric for whether something is large or small. Size, after all, includes both of those extremes and everything in between. It may not be immediately clear how an expression made up of big and small comes to mean anyway, or eventually. After all, neither of those concepts seem to have much to do with size. But if you think about it, we have expressions like this in English, such as one way or the other, which is about direction, and means whether it goes in one direction or the other, whatever happens, or anyway. In this example, big is one direction and small is the other. There are lots of expressions for anyway that follow this pattern in Chinese. Indeed, our next example, made up of the characters for high and low, can also be used in Chinese to mean anyway and eventually. Its more literal meanings in Chinese, Korean, and Japanese are pitch, whether a sound is high or low, and height or altitude, whether things other than sound are high or low. Again, we see two opposites combined in order to refer to a concept that includes them both. Other examples of this pattern include this one here, pronounced 多少 in Chinese, or 多少 in Japanese, and means how much in Chinese and somewhat in Japanese. This one, which is pronounced zehi in Japanese, 是非 in Chinese, and sibi in Korean, and in Japanese means without fail, or right and wrong, or quarrel in Chinese and Korean. Now we got another one here, is on the area of direction. We have sayu, as it's pronounced in Japanese, 左右 in Chinese, and 좌우 in Korean. It literally means left-right, which can mean left and right, and approximately in Chinese, or to control, i.e. to move something in one direction or the other direction in Korean, Chinese, and Japanese, and equivocation in Japanese. Now, this next one literally means existing, non-existing. Umu in Japanese, you in Chinese, yumu in Korean, and in all three languages just means whether a thing exists or not. This last one is only in Chinese as far as I've been able to determine. I've never really seen it anywhere else, at least not in anything resembling this meaning. It's 东西, which literally means east-west, but in Chinese is used to mean stuff or thing. So, just to sum this up, we've looked at the very common pattern of Chinese characters with opposite meanings coming together to form expressions that somehow encompass both opposites. In some cases, these opposites come together to refer to abstract concepts, like pitch or right and wrong, or question words like how much. Sometimes they just mean something like whatever, or one way or the other. And that's it for this episode of Getting Comfortable with Chinese Characters. In the next episode, we'll look at another two-character pattern where characters with the same or similar meanings are combined. Thank you to everyone who's watched this far. I hope it's been helpful. If you enjoy these videos, please consider paying for them. Those who'd like to support my work can subscribe to my Twitch channel or Patreon, or contribute directly by leaving a tip. Links in the description. And of course, please do like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks to all my subscribers and followers here and on Twitch, where I stream my 36-language Duolingo speedrun 2 or 3 days a week.